Welcome back to another episode of Torque. So I love these days that I'm painting, and on this episode we're going to be painting epoxy primer, some paint, and then also some U-POL Raptor Bedliner. I love that stuff. It goes on really good. It's really tough. I used it on the Chevelle. I'll show you the whole process on how to do that. So let's head out to the barn and get to work. All right, so we're getting to a fun part. So the car is on the side, on the rotisserie. You guys know that I sprayed epoxy on this originally, but you know I've have so much welding that I had to use the self-etching primer in certain locations. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and scuff up the whole bottom of this. I'm thinking about just painting the frame itself to kind of match the subframe connectors. I haven't decided, but we still have to scuff up everything. Then we're gonna go ahead and seam seal everything, and then we're gonna spray more epoxy on. I'm still trying to decide on these subframe connectors, whether to leave them and do the entire subframe connector or tape off. I'm still trying to decide what to do with that. So with that, let's go ahead and start sanding on this and prepping it for paint. All right, so there's only so many areas that we can use the pneumatic sander. So we're gonna have to sand most of this by hand, just little pieces of sandpaper. It shouldn't be that bad. We just need to scuff up the surface, make sure it's got good adhesion. All right, so I have most of the bottom of the car already scuffed down with 180. I haven't touched the engine compartment yet. You're gonna find areas on this, since you're using sandpaper, you're not able to get to little dips and stuff, you know, like where spot welds are and that kind of thing. So get you some Scotch Brite, the dark Scotch Brite. This stuff is 180 to 220 grit. So you'll be able to get into those little areas. You wanna try and deglaze everything just so that epoxy's got something to bite on. Okay, so I went ahead and just scuffed everything that I needed to paint in black epoxy and paint. I left the areas like the quarter panels and cowl area that are going to actually get color. I did everything, including the trunk, inside, underneath, engine compartment, everything. So get ready for epoxy. First thing we need to do though is seam sealer. And if you have one of these assembly manuals, pretty cool. It actually says in the back, it shows all the areas that you need to seam seal. So we're gonna go ahead and prep this thing. I've got to blow off all the dust, and we're gonna do one area at a time. I think it's too overwhelming to do several areas at one time. Plus, when you roll this around on the rotisserie, you're gonna have little bits and pieces coming out of enclosed areas that are gonna ruin your paint. So let's go ahead and get this thing prepped. Okay, so when you're wiping down all the areas, don't use lacquer thinner, especially if you have some of the self-etching primer that's sprayable out of a can, because you'll end up just removing that. So you want to use some wax and grease remover. I love using one of these little spray bottles. They work really good. So I'm going to start wiping down the areas, and we're going to prep it for seam sealer. All right, so we got this all wiped down. I'm just going to show you guys on this left forward wheel well a little bit about seam seal. I'm not going to go in detail about it, but to me there's only two ways to put this thing on. You can be really neat about it and tape off exactly where you want to seam seal, or you can freehand it. If you're going to freehand it, make sure you cut the tip small enough that you don't put too much on. Otherwise, tape it off for the areas that you're going to see. Now, this you're going to see only if you have the wheel off or someone looks inside the wheel well. These areas in back of the wheel well, nobody's ever going to see these. So I would just go ahead and freehand that. So for me, I want this to look pretty neat, especially across here as well when someone looks inside the wheel well. Other than that, just freehanded. All right, so I have this partially taped off. There's a couple other spots that I'm going to have to do. I am using Eastwood solid, high solid seam sealer. I really like this stuff. Just make sure that when you cut this thing off, you cut it off really small so that you're able to control how much is going on. And you'll have to take something sharp and pierce inside, and then you're ready to go. So you don't need a ton of this stuff. It works really well. And if you're able to put it on fairly small areas and take your time, you can get it to look pretty decent. I mean, there you go. It's pretty easy. So I'm going to continue doing this, yeah, then we should be good. And make sure you take off this tape with this stuff still wet. You don't want to leave this on. You're going to have so many problems if you wait till this stuff is dry. All right, so we went ahead and seam sealed the entire car, including the trunk and inside. Wanted to just go ahead and get it done since we are working on it. So definitely going to take your time on this. It's not going to be like a hour job. It's going to take you a little bit of time. So now we're going to go ahead and wheel this into the paint booth and prep it for paint. All right, so you guys saw us move this into the paint booth. You can see I've already started taping a little bit on the other side. I'm going to first paint the inside of the car, then we'll move on to the other areas. Now this is just epoxy going on, so if I get a little bit overspray into the trunk, it's no big deal. If it's within the 7-day window, I can go ahead and spray more epoxy, let's say into the trunk, and then put that U-Pol, which is what we're going to do in the trunk, and we're also going to do it underneath. So I really want you guys to see that U-Pol process and how easy it goes on. So we're going to go ahead and continue taping, and then I'll show you guys painting the epoxy. All right, so I've got everything taped off, got the plastic in place. Definitely all your screw holes, make sure you've got something there. I've got some bolts in certain places and just some tape in others. You don't want to get any paint on those screws, the screw holes. I also have taken an air blow gun, blew off all the debris, and now I'm starting to wipe down everything. So make sure before you paint that the surface is at least 65 degrees. That's per the tech sheet on Southern Polyurethane, the epoxy. And make sure your epoxy itself is at least 65 degrees. So you want both of those things to be warm enough. When it comes time, I'll turn on the heater in this. I'll shut it down right before we start spraying. So let's go ahead and keep on wiping this down and getting ready for paint. Okay, so we're all set up to paint. Let's go ahead and check the temperature. I've already checked it before. It was a little bit low. Let's see where it's at. It's about 69 degrees. I don't know if you guys can see that. So it's hit 70. So we're good. All right, so I wanted to show you guys the products that I'm going to use in this video. But first off, I'm going to say you're probably wondering why I'm in the bathroom. And this is why I'm in the bathroom. I've got a heater in here. It's a small area. I keep this area at about 70 degrees. And that way I can keep these products at 70 degrees. Especially the primer. You want it at minimum of 65 when it's going on. And you want it to stay, that surface, at 65 at least 24 hours. So the epoxy primer that I use is Southern Polyurethane. I love this stuff. It comes in quarts and gallons, the different colors you can get, and it sands out really good. I had PPG years ago. I used it, and it gummed up my sandpaper. This stuff is really good sanding. You can mix it up for a sealer. Mix it 1:1 to 1 and use it as a sealer. I've used that as well. I love this stuff. So the Raptor, this U-Pol Raptor, this is for the bedliner that we're going to put on the bottom of the vehicle and also on the trunk. So you just put about 8 ounces of fluid in each one of these bottles, shake it up, use a Schutz gun, spray it on. You can change the finish a little bit with the pressure. This stuff is really tough. I love this stuff. So with that, let's go ahead and head back out to the paint booth and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so just to show you guys what I'm using an FLG3. It's a finish line. It's DeVilbiss. gun. I've had it for years now. It's about a $200 gun. It wasn't that expensive. I use it mainly for all my primers, especially the high build primer. I've got tips that are 2.2, sorry. So it works pretty well for this. I don't really use it for the finish work. I've got a Pro Light that I use for that. Setting up the gun is pretty good. All you have to do is hold down the trigger, not when you have fluid inside. Hold down the trigger and then start turning in your fluid until you start feeling resistance. And I go about half to one turn in, and it seems to flow out pretty good. So we can go ahead and check our pattern with this. And you can see that's pretty good. It's not heavy on either side. I did reduce this by about 5%, so it should be pretty good. So let's go ahead and get some primer on this. All right, so we got the inside all coated, one good coat of epoxy. I did have to touch up a couple areas a little bit later, but it came out really good. I'm happy with it. We don't really have to put too much more on this just because it's the inside, and it will be just fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and epoxy the trunk, which I'm not gonna bore you guys with, and I'll do the bottom. I'll epoxy the bottom of the floor, and then I'll bring you guys back to see that U-Paul Raptor go on. It should be pretty cool. All right, so I've got 2 coats of epoxy on the bottom of the car, just to give it some added protection. We've got areas taped off that I don't want that buildup on there, because these are areas that something may mount, and that buildup may inhibit me putting like the bumpers on, that type of thing, or where the shocks will mount up. So we're all ready to shoot. Let's go ahead and get this stuff mixed up. All right, so I've put 8 ounces of hardener into a cup. Really easy. I only like to mix one of these at a time, just for the fact if something happens, you don't want to have 2 of them mixed up, and then you only have a certain period of time to try and get on that second one. So let's go ahead and open this up. Pour the 8 ounces in there. Now we just have to mix it up for 2 minutes. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna do is set my regulator to 60 PSI. It's gone up just a little bit, but I like to have it at around 60 PSI. It's gonna be a little bit finer. If you go down to 40, you're gonna get a little bit rougher of a texture. Let's go ahead and set the bottle up. What you're finding with a lot of these kits, these U-Paul kits, these Raptor kits, they come with Schutz guns. A lot of them come with Schutz guns. I must have like 3 of these different things. They all shoot about the same. I haven't seen really any difference. This one has an adjustable nozzle. I tried playing with it a little bit. It doesn't really do that much of an adjustment. So just grab your nozzle, and here's the mixed up bottle. Just screw it right in. And we're ready to shoot. All right, for cleaning up the gun, I just like to use lacquer thinner. This is my D cups that I usually use for spraying. That's all you have to do. All right, so we got one really good coat on this. The manufacturer actually says to put 2 coats on, but that's using it as a bed liner. We're really using this as corrosion preventative, and then also to make it look a lot better, and which it does. It makes it look outstanding. Makes it look like it's brand new. So we are gonna do this in the wheel wells, front and back, just to help with rock chips. Try and get that sorted out. And then unfortunately we weren't able to get to the engine compartment. I was hoping to paint that on this episode, but we'll get that on the next episode. You can get this stuff in a tintable form. We actually got it tinted red on my 71 Chevelle. It came out outstanding, so you can get it tinted any color you'd like. You did notice that the subframe connectors, I actually left the powder coating in the very center. I just did the ends just where it was welded. So really happy with the results. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued.